So I was actually brought in to like change the direction of Polygon. So this is like a long story that like lots of people don't understand very well. So Polygon started, and if you think of like, you go way back, what made Polygon successful? And the answer is DeFi. What do most people know Polygon for? They know Polygon for farming Matic on Aave. And in doing that, you got a ton of interest across the board on Polygon. And then what made sense at the time, looking at that, was, okay, let's like leverage that. Change our brand away from DeFi as much into something that can onboard the masses.
Welcome back to Andrew Asks How podcast. Here with me today, I have one of the, what people would call, I guess, big wigs in the space that are leading the crypto blockchain innovation across, I guess, the world now at this point, especially in the United States. Marc, CEO of Polygon, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Andrew? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. And once again, I said it off camera, I'll say it again. We appreciate you jumping on with us. Marc, a lot of very spicy things have happened this past week. Today is December 6th when it's recorded, for context for the listeners. Very spicy things. Bitcoin hit 100K. I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, which is a big win for the space. There was a point in time when I guess Bitcoiners and us knew it was going to happen, but people didn't think it was, and we didn't know when it was going to happen, but we thought it was going to happen. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin going to 100K?
Yeah, it's about time. It's funny. I've had like lots of friends reach out about it, and the answer that I gave them every time was, I told you this in 2017, and I told you in 2018, and 19, and 20, and 21, and 22, and 23. And so, for me, it was always a matter of time. Like, Bitcoin is the most secure network in the entire world. It is a very simple concept of supply and demand, and that causes number to go up. It's really like that simple of a concept. And so seeing it hit 100K and like lay the foundation for like the entire, honestly, industry to continue to evolve and kind of bring in a new internet is like amazing.
Yeah, we've all gotten texts this week. I can imagine your text message is a little bit different than mine. My buddies outside the space, as of right now, are less interested in how this powers the internet. They're more interested in the fact that you make money off of this. What do your texts look like? What do yours look like? And what are your friends asking you?
Yeah, there's kind of like two streams in this. One is, hey, I haven't bought enough Bitcoin. Should I be buying more Bitcoin? And I'm like, I don't know. I've told you to buy Bitcoin like every day for the past 7 years. So yeah, probably. And then the second one is actually like a lot of people are really interested in like where do you see things actually evolving like beyond Bitcoin, which to me is actually like a cool question, because it isn't like entirely like, a little of that is like number go up question. Like they're like, hey, tokens, but there's this like thing in there that's like this understanding that there's something actually more here. And that I like love, because it gives me an opportunity to like talk through like, you know, it's still basics, right? But like basics of Ethereum and why it makes sense compared to Bitcoin. And like, to me, like I view like my role with my friends as like just an educator, period, of like blockchains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, like let them understand why these networks exist and what they do and what it means for the future. And hope that eventually they get it, and then they can spread the word as well.
I think the saying goes something like, you buy the asset at the price you deserve, whether it's 10K, 10 million, 20K, 50K, whatever it is. You buy the price, or you buy the asset at the price that you deserve. Marc, you mentioned 2016, 2017, 2018, you mentioned to your friends to buy it literally 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. You've been in crypto for a while. How'd you get involved in the space initially?
Yeah, very different than I think most people. So I'm a lawyer by background. And when I think it was 2015, I was always curious about tech. So I started learning a lot about Ethereum at that time, and typical go down the rabbit hole, curious, want to understand it. I got to late 2016. I was like a 4th or 5th year lawyer at the time. And I was thinking, like I need to get into something that is more unique. And to me, this is like a story that's actually um, just typical business story, which is like when you want to do well in something, you should probably specialize in something.
Yeah.
And then evolve from there. And so for me, it was like very obvious. I'm like, okay, I'm working with startups as a securities lawyer, early, like emerging companies. I was like, I should probably do something more specific than that because there's like a million other lawyers doing that exact same thing. And I loved crypto so much. And I was like, okay, is there something here? And it was like just starting to like percolate. And I was like, okay, well, why don't I just jump into this and take a bet? I was like, because like there was one thing that I was very sure on is like, if you want to take a bet on something, take a bet on crypto. Like to me, it was like actually that obvious that A, it was a bet, but B, it was like a pretty safe bet from a like long-term perspective. And so I jumped into it and like, funny enough, within like, I think 5-6 months, I had like a bigger book of business as a fourth or fifth year associate than like almost every partner at the law firm that I was at, which is like another like 80 or 100 partners or something like that. And so to me, like it's always the case, like taking bets pays off and people don't take bets often enough, but that's kind of how I got into crypto.
People will take the bets, right? But they won't take the big ones. I think the big ones are the ones that count. You don't got to take, 10 big bets in 10 years, but maybe 2, 3 in 10 years, I think is fair. You mentioned the big book of business for an associate is, by the way, is very, very impressive. You also mentioned the fact that you liked crypto early on before, I guess, everyone kind of found out what it is today. What did you like about it early on? Like, was it the price movement? Was it the ITO craze? Was it people you respected jumping into the space? Like, what did you like about it now? And do you still kind of appreciate it for that reason, or has it pivoted today? Because when I got into the space a couple of years ago, what I liked it for back then has now changed into something else, but it's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So mine's maybe like a little bit unique. It's like purely tech oriented. It was like, but from like a legal perspective, I was looking at Ethereum and I was thinking, okay, right now you have, some crowdfunding platforms. I think like Kickstarter was the thing that I always had in mind at the time. And the idea for me that was super cool was that like, how does Kickstarter work today? It's like contractually, you've got this company that agrees to like effectively like escrow funds while you see if enough funds are raised. And then those people receive those funds. And to me, like the idea that like you could actually just have a contract that could actually escrow those funds instead of any people. And when a certain price hits, that like automatically results in the distribution of those assets was like super cool just as like a lawyer. It was like, oh, we literally don't even need all this legal crap. We can just have a contract that is going to hold these funds and we don't need to trust people. And once you kind of like get that concept and you start carrying it out to like basically everything in the world, you start realizing like, oh, this technology actually allows us to exclude intermediaries, the very obvious thing, like across the world in everything that we do. And that was just so amazing to me. Like, it was just like, holy crap. And that like the kind of, so that was like my moment of realization. The part when it really hit me was 2019. I got introduced to Hayden at the time and started doing like all of Uniswap's legal work at the time. And when he introduced me to Uniswap, I went over there and I tried it. And to me, it was like the most magical experience in the world. It was like, okay, I've got this shitcoin that is completely illiquid. It's not on a single centralized exchange. I can't.
You
do
said
anything,
shitcoin, right? Just to clarify, you said shitcoin, right? You said shitcoin.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a total shitcoin.
Okay.
Actually, to be very specific as to how much of a shitcoin it was, is like Celsius. It was like participating in the Celsius ICO.
So it was like underwater. It was underwater. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was actually doing well because it was before Celsius went under. It was doing great actually.
Yeah.
But I was hitting on this and I'm like, okay, it's not like listed on any centralized exchange I can get access to. And so, why don't I go see if there's like any liquidity on Uniswap? And there it is. There's like a pool sitting there and you could just magically trade this asset at any point in time with nobody able to stop you. And all you're dealing with is like how much slippage is there. That's like a super cool thing when you think of any liquid asset. And so for me, that permissionless kind of nature of Uniswap was something that I like loved. And so like when I like fast forward to today, Like the thing that still gets me excited is like the idea that like anybody can access Web3 from anywhere in a censorship resistant way. And the thing that's like, the thing that bothers me a little bit about this space is how much sometimes we get away from that. But the way that I look at it is like, it's a very temporary thing, is that we are at a point in time right now that is incredibly competitive. And that results in like a lot of shortcuts being taken, which results in a lot of centralization. And I think what's going to end up happening is like, as like the space consolidates, like fast forward 5 years from now, you're actually going to see like a boatload more decentralization than you actually see today. And I'm like, honestly, like excited for those days.
How do you figure, and like with what examples you think we're kind of getting away from that? Like who, if you can, I mean, I wouldn't suggest you name dropping at all, but what are some examples, like nameless, I guess, situations more for more context, like from us getting away from this? Like why? How's it happening?
Yeah. I mean, I could say just directly, like even Polygon, it's the case, right? Like every L2 right now is centralized, right? And in some senses that makes sense. Like we built Polygon zkVM in a centralized way, but when you actually have like a full prover connected to it, it actually gives you a lot of like protections that you would want. But we've seen a bunch of L2s that have no proofs at all. Like that's no better than just a centralized database. And we've seen massive TVL on chains of that sort. Like that's like kind of incredibly disappointing of the space, to be frank, right? Like that's not why most people who got into the space got into the space. And it's not what, and even if it isn't, it's not what differentiates the space. It's not what like gives value to anything that we're actually doing. And I do view this as like very much just like a point in time. I don't think that's actually going to remain the case. But at this point in time, we're definitely away from like the values that at least like got me interested in this space.
Do you think the values market changed though? Like, I mean, like, do you think the values of like why people came and why they're still here, and I guess the new crowd can change? Because I think even looking at social media and its different contexts, I think the crowd that kind of like started with it, especially from a younger age versus I guess an older age, like I'm Gen Z for context, I think we view social media a little bit differently because we've had it since literally birth, since people, or I guess in relation to people that are older than us. Do you think crypto, blockchain, the early comers like yourself who were here, ICO crazy, even a little bit before potentially, do you think you guys view it differently than people who are newcomers now? And that like separation will always kind of exist, and crypto is going to be one of those places. The way that the internet is viewed, it's kind of everything for everybody for different reasons why. But it can all thrive in some context, possibly.
Yeah. This is such an amazing question. So first, I love how you like implicitly called me old there. That was awesome. I totally agree with it. I'm totally old.
Mark, you're young. How old are you? Mid-30s? You're mid-30s, right?
I'm 38, which is too old.
Okay, I'm 27, so we're like 9-10 years, which is like technically COVID happened for about 4 years, Mark. So you're like 34 technically.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Although crypto may be like 55, so it is what it is. But no, I think this is a really good point. But let's take meme coins because I think that's like a great example of something. The thing is, like lots of people who got into crypto, and I did hate meme coins. I love meme coins. I think meme coins are awesome. But if you think about it, like what makes meme coins awesome? It's actually the permissionless, censorship resistant. Like, do you think you're going to be trading like meme coins on some centralized database that like can restrict you from trading them? And the answer is like no. It's the permissionless nature of meme coins and the censorship resistance of blockchains that actually allow meme coins to thrive. And so in that sense, like I think Gen Z and all younger generations, like they want the same thing actually. And so I think that's one important point, but still getting to your point, like one level deeper, which is, okay, but is it okay if we have some points of centralization? And I think the answer is yes. What we need to recognize is that different use cases needs different levels of censorship resistance, right? And this is why I'm so big into like the kind of like L2 roadmap and how it works. Like I think every chain should be able to be built differently. Like a gaming chain with low value transactions does not need the censorship resistance and does not need the decentralization permission, like as permissionless nature as like, $100 million trades in DeFi. And so I definitely see like a trade-off there. But when the entire like premise of the space shifts towards like, we don't care about decentralization, that's where like I get worried, because at the core, again, getting back to meme coins, it is that decentralization, the permissionless nature and censorship resistant nature of blockchains that allow us to do the things that we actually like to do in crypto.
Now I have some follow-ups. And for the record, you're a very young guy. 38 is not old at all. I mean, I feel old 27, but 38 is, when you look at it in hindsight, it's very, very young. 27 is also some people still say I'm a baby. That's a whole other conversation. The parts that I think people enjoy, and I want your thoughts on this, of crypto and blockchain, is the decentralization when it comes to being their own bank and having their own money and their own assets and having control of where their money is and not having the risk of it, I guess, if it of in someone else's power or whatever. I mean, obviously things get stolen, but that's beside the point. I think I think one of the main drivers for crypto itself or decentralization itself. And when it comes to the centralized aspect of things, to different levels for different situations, obviously very nuanced, as you said. And you guys at Polygon obviously have a ton of brands that are big business, like big wigs that are operating with you guys on the chain, and all that good stuff. And when you talk to people today, um, they just want a better way and easier way to live life. Like, I think that's what it is. Like, all the nerd stuff, I get it why people nerd about all this stuff, but I think if you asked a normal person who's not paying attention and like they're more focused on like paying bills and raising family and having kids and doing the daily things, the weekly things, I think they're just focused on having a better life and making it somehow less frictionless and easier. Do you think crypto blockchain can give this to the market?
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree with you on what people want. And the thing is, right now, like people want that, but they don't. The friction is just like too high, right? Like they don't understand it. Like, and this is becoming less and less true. Obviously, like that's something that we've heard for years. And I think the role of like big brands is actually slowly introducing people to this. And like I think the idea that like somebody can go to Stripe and send a stable coin on Polygon POS is like a great way to like introduce them slowly, right? Because like if you think the first times that you ever use crypto, like you probably, I assume if you were anything like me, you sat there and you're like, oh shit, what am I screwing up right now? Right. And like you were very, very worried. And to like be able to like onboard people comfortably is something that I think is actually like really important. And I honestly don't really care how much work we do on wallets for like another like 2 or 3 years at least. Like we're just not going to be at a point where people are like not worried about that at all. They are going to be worried about it to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like you slowly bring like fintechs into the space, and they are slowly letting people transfer funds, and they're basically saying, hey, like you're going to pay less money, you're going to pay less fees when you do this. That allows people to have like a smooth onboarding experience, to probably a better wallet experience than they would have had if they just like randomly downloaded, MetaMask and then, came to Polygon and started doing things. Like it's going to be a much better experience for them. And so I think that's ultimately like how we onboard those folks like into crypto in like a more major way, while still giving them, again, like in the long run, like the benefits that you outlined, and like allow people to be their own banks.
On the topic of onboarding, before we get to Polygon, what you guys are doing, I onboarded one of my buddies this week, and he's completely green. So for context, like he literally knows like nothing about crypto, other than like the price has gone up the past 2-3 months to a ridiculous amount where like, he's like, I got to pay attention to this now. He's heard about it before in college, university, but never really, did the thing, kind of got into it. And I was giving him like the spiel, I guess you can call it that, of like the ins and outs from the space of how I understand it. And I was giving him all the wallet security stuff, where to find asset classes, like all these different things, how to send money from Coinbase to this, to that, to Trust Wallet, to all this stuff, cold wallets, like all the things that we've done that we now consider easy. I was giving it to him, and he looked incredibly dumbfounded most of the time. And he's not a dumb guy by any means. And I had to ask him, is there anything you want me to repeat? And most of the stuff was repeated, obviously, as you'd expect, as it should have been for us, as it maybe was for some of us, which is a massive upside. And I was thinking about this after the call I had with him. The learning curve here is very steep, and like most things, there are learning curves. Obviously, like a new job, you're investing in a financial market or building a house or whatever the heck it is, there's always a learning curve. But the crypto one is incredibly steep and long. And like, I don't think the internet had that big of a learning curve. What are your thoughts? Do you think the learning curve is too much? Because the way I phrased it to him was this space, as my perception of understanding of it, is between the financial markets and then the technical markets, like the tech software, like Silicon Valley-ish people, and then you have Wall Street. It's a mixture of both, and it's incredibly steep. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I always say the way that I always describe it is like crypto is social, technical, and financial, right? It's like those three things. If you didn't have those three things, then you wouldn't have crypto. And so I like fully agree with you. Yeah, the way that I look at it is like the reason why most people are still just focused on number go up is because they don't feel comfortable doing anything other than that. And doing that literally just means buying tokens on Coinbase and holding them. And that's the thing like somebody's comfortable doing. And that's why they keep doing it, because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone and try to do something more. Now, I think things like meme coins have enough potential upside that they're willing to explore a little bit more, and it brings more people into the mainstream. I think things like Polymarket on Polygon POS get enough interest that people are willing to like try a little bit getting outside of their comfort zone. But ultimately, like, I think the best example of like how we finally get people there is just like go use like Immutable. And you know, Immutable, ZKVM, a gaming chain. It's you sign up for Passport, and you know, you just have your email login creates a wallet for you, like that typical like Web2 experience that you'd expect to get. Like, to me, that's why when you talk about like things like gaming onboarding, like the next like 1 million, 2 million, 5 million users, it actually has somewhat to do with like people liking gaming. I actually think it has more to do with the mindset of people building gaming in crypto, which is gaming is for normies. And therefore I need to create a normie experience, which is what leads them to develop products that are very desirable for normies, which includes like one-click logins and a wallet is created for them and you're done. Whereas in DeFi, but you know, we sit there and we say, hey, we're building DeFi for degens. And so nobody focuses on just creating a one-click user experience for normies, because that's actually realistically not their target market right now. And the question is like, when do we like get over the chasm where like we basically say like we got to bring those Web3 people, like the normies into DeFi. And that's why I was talking like fintechs, for example, earlier. Like, I think that like easier onboarding experience through a fintech that gets somebody comfortable, gets them to like send crypto for the first time somewhere, even in like a very Web2-esque way, starts getting them over like some confidence, probably false confidence to be honest, but like some level of confidence that they can like transact in crypto. And then they go and they explore something else and they say, okay, cool. Like, now I know how to send this. Why don't I send it to a new wallet of mine? And I'm hoping that by that time we've gotten wallet experiences good enough to like really make that experience. And there's look, the problem actually that we have a little bit with wallets is like the entrenchment of like initial wallet creators versus like new ones, right? And I think Rabby has done a decent job of like as a newer entrant of like creating a better user experience. But there's things like Octo. Octo is a wallet that nobody knows. Octo is probably the best wallet experience, I would argue right now in crypto. And it's like incredibly easy to use. You don't need to think about what chain you're on. You don't need to think about where your balances are on different chains, like all that kind of thing that like you shouldn't have to worry about. You know, Magic, which is like the wallet experience underlying things like Polymarket and Immutable, they're going to be creating like their first person wallet. Like, I think they're going to be able to like nail a wallet experience that like you haven't really seen. And not like knock on MetaMask. It's just like when you're innovating from that perspective that MetaMask has, which is the perspective that started, you know, back in the day. It's just way harder to get there compared to a new wallet. And so even though we have too many wallets, we still don't have enough that have actually like nailed that experience in the right way. But I really think we're getting there, which is going to allow kind of normies to come into like other parts of crypto and actually feel that experience with like more confidence than they have today.
It's a great point too about the wallets. A lot of them not very user friendly. I only use the ones that I use because I know because that's what I'm most familiar with. So obviously you
Yeah.
do in some instances you're most familiar with whether it's good. I'm for the record, I don't use MetaMask at all. I think it's the worst wallet out there. No offense. I think it's the worst one out there. I actually like Phantom a decent amount when I do stuff on Solana, but that's beside the point. Um, Honest question, back then when you first got involved in crypto, if you didn't make any money, quote unquote money, on the tokens, on the thing that you were invested in, do you think you would still be here today?
I mean, that was like easy for me because I literally didn't even get in for the money. I literally
Okay.
thought it was just such cool tech that
Okay.
I like fundamentally believed that tech was going to change like the world, like it really did. Now there is a part though, there is a money oriented part to it, which is, would I have gone into crypto if I couldn't make a career out of crypto?
Yeah, probably not.
Which is another way of like not money go up, but like career out of crypto.
Career go
And
up.
I think the answer's, I think the answer is like probably no, I probably wouldn't have. And the simple reason is because I understood it. I thought it was like really cool, but as like a non-technical person, I couldn't do anything in crypto. It's not like I could go like write code and like grow, like help grow Ethereum in that way. Like the only way I could do it was with what I actually knew. Right. And I think I did a pretty good job of advancing like the crypto space on like the legal side of things, before actually taking over like this role as CEO.
Yep.
And that was kind of like the contribution that I could bring that was like not directly financial. But no, I doubt I would have gone into the space if I saw like no upside for anything in my life from a financial perspective.
Yep.
And this is because I come from a very privileged place, right? If I was in Argentina and I was dealing with hyperinflation, I would probably get into crypto literally so that I could pay bills in a stable way.
Yeah.
Not even number go up, just like literally live a normal life that doesn't
Number
deal
not
with
go down on
worrying
stable
about
coin. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
number not go down. And so,
Yeah.
and I do think this is true, by the way, just in general, which is like, in the developed world, the need for crypto is not there. It has to be like a desire for crypto because of something else. Like we don't need crypto in the US. We want it. That is very different from other places in the world that actually like need crypto. And that's why I think I come from that perspective of like, I did it. And I probably wouldn't have done it if it had no financial impact on me.
We'll get to all the juicy stuff of like crypto in the US regulations soon, but you mentioned you wouldn't join for career advancement. I mean, I would say your career advanced pretty well. How do you find yourself now the CEO of Polygon? How did this happen? I mean, I want to know like kind of like the long version of there's a cool story behind it. I think there was, I don't remember the person's name, but he's doing very well. There was a LinkedIn meme that had gone around a couple months ago where the individual, I think it's still around, you probably still find it on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. He started off as, I think this is like ground floor, like lowest you can go entry point to join Nike. And after 25 years, he's I think CEO or something. That's C-suite, which is great. Like that was progression over a course of 25 years at its finest. You have a similar story to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to try to fake that I have a story that exciting. But look, I ultimately view it as like, combine hard work and luck, and you're going to get to the results that you want. And the way that I look at it is like, look, in 2017, got into crypto for the reasons we talked about. I still remember in January 2019, I worked like 10 hours that month. And the reason is because I had no work to do. Crypto was completely dead. I was working on security tokens for 10 hours that month. And I said, I believe that crypto will come back. I'm going to stick with it. And either my career will completely fail or it won't. And then I went to Consensus in April and I got super lucky. I met Jake Chervinsky. Jake Chervinsky is now the general counsel at Variant Fund. He was, when I met him, just starting as general counsel at Compound. And he hired me and my partner at the time, Rebecca Reddick, who's now the chief legal officer at Polygon Labs, to do all of their legal work. And that resulted in like in April 2019, May, something like that, like getting a better understanding of DeFi than like anyone else in, frankly, most of crypto, but 100% more than any other lawyer in crypto. And that work ended up being good enough that they referred us to Uniswap and then to, frankly, a significant portion of the DeFi protocols. And by 2021, I think I had like 80 or 90 DeFi protocols that I was doing like the legal work for. I knew DeFi very well. Every fund sent DeFi projects to us for any work that needed to get done. And the thing is, like, if you're going to do well, my perspective, in the legal world, in DeFi, you better understand the tech, the social, and the financial aspect of it. You have to fully understand crypto, or you're not going to do well. Obviously, you need the legal overlay. Like, without that, you're just BSing your clients. But you need those components. And so I spent a massive amount of time. Like, I read every single doc on Uniswap, on Compound that they had anywhere. I wrote up memos that like literally outlined exactly how the protocols worked in every way possible. And the thing is, once you do that for like, in the context of a few different blockchains and in the context of a few different DeFi applications, you can generalize that across like almost all of crypto. And you get like a very good understanding of it. And so, by the time I ended up leaving private practice and going to DYDX to be their chief legal officer, like I understood, like, let's call it like the business of DeFi and blockchains pretty darn well. I've always kind of, I know when I talked to Sandeep before joining Polygon, the first thing that I told him is just a heads up that like, I'm way more of a business guy than I am a lawyer. I'm just an accidental lawyer. And I think that when I joined Polygon, that's something that Sandeep had in like the back of his head. And a year after, him and I had worked like very, very closely. And they were looking for like
which
a
is
CEO.
Mark, which is very common, by the way. I know a lot of lawyers. You probably know it 10 times more, which is very common. A lot of them say this, like not the business thing. Like I kind of fell into this by accident, but I kind of want to go somewhere else after. Like they like, does that make sense?
Yeah. There's not that many lawyers that like get in. And they're like, I really always wanted to be a lawyer because that sounds so exciting. There are a few, but there's not that many. But yeah, so I think Sandeep kind of had that in the back of his mind. I mean, they're looking for a CEO. He's like, okay, we've had a year of seeing that Marc gets crypto like very well, and like most aspects of it. So that's kind of how I ended up landing in the CEO role.
God, I'm part of it too. And like you mentioned, luck. Luck to me is just doing the right thing for a long enough time horizon that it just eventually kind of clicks somewhere. And I think you've done that, and I think you'll like this. Last cycle, and I like, I don't want to like put it in a speculative way, but Polygon, the token, did very, very well last cycle from a price appreciation standpoint compared to literally everything else in crypto. And a lot of my buddies bought the token because number one, the price did what it did. You don't have to comment on that at all. And they also bought it, which is the real the question to you. They were in love, and they kept reiterating to me and like the guys around us in the circle, even people like in their personal family, whatever personal relationships, of who is in Polygon's network and who you guys are doing business with. And like it was obviously, as you know, the who's of the world. So how much is your responsibility as current CEO of Polygon to position yourself with these top brands that end up coming into the space and then end up being top brands in the space as well, even if they don't have a market cap association to it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. By the way, a side note. So you see these very pathetic things that I have behind me. Those are because like I like love affirmations, but one of the ones that you can't see, which is it's very upside down. But the harder you work, the luckier you get. Just to your point there, like I very much believe in that. But to answer your question, so I was actually brought in to like change the direction of Polygon. So this is like a long story that like lots of people don't understand very well. So Polygon started, and if you think of like, you go way back, what made Polygon successful? And the answer is DeFi. What do
Yes.
most people know Polygon for? They know Polygon for farming Matic on Aave. And in doing that, you got a ton of interest across the board on Polygon. And then what made sense at the time, looking at that, was okay, let's like leverage that. Change our brand away from DeFi as much into something that can onboard the masses. Because like ultimately that's what we all want. We want to bring, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people into Web3. And so that was kind of like the strategic choice made at the time. And I think at that time, it made a lot of sense. And then what you had was Terra Luna crash.
Yes.
And then you had the FTX scandal. And those things basically killed the reality of like bringing like brands into Web3 in masses. What it turned into instead was brands tiptoeing into Web3, but still being willing to do stuff. Like there was enough momentum there that they were willing to. So what you saw was like a lot of brands that came to Polygon. And they were there to do real things. Like they dropped NFTs. They all had plans for not just dropping NFTs, but then doing something beyond that. And not just in a Web2 way, but actually in a Web3 centric way. But when FTX happened, basically they mostly turned to, maybe we'll keep this like we've dropped NFTs and let's keep it like a Web2 experience. Let's not go too much into Web3. And it really hurt like the possibility of actually in that cycle, bringing in brands in like a big way where they're actually going to bring their users fully on chain. I still fundamentally believe that that's going to happen, by the way. But what happened was we really realized like, hey, right now we're actually too early so that it can have like a meaningful on-chain impact. And like, there are some exceptions to this. Like Reddit has done like a good job of actually like normalizing Web3. Like their tokens are actually like transferable, and you see like peaks of like ups and downs of activity on like POS from that. And I think that's like
Reddit has an advantage
awesome.
though. Like, not to cut you off, Mark, but Reddit has an advantage as I see it because of the social layer. Everything is in house.
Yep, I think it makes a huge difference. I totally agree with you. And so that's kind of like what we've seen. And like the benefit of this for Polygon is that the brand name that Polygon has in enterprises and like financial institutions is incredible. And one of the things we never expected, but that has happened, is that we thought that we would always need to hold the hands of every big institution and enterprise that would come to Polygon. And then when we started realizing, and it's still happening today, and it doesn't really happen anywhere else, is like these brands come and like drop NFTs on Polygon without us ever like hearing about it or knowing about it. And I never thought that would happen. That obviously happens in like Web3 in general. But for like a company to do that, who usually, by the way, is like, hey, I want to like an infrastructure deal with like an SLA of some sort so I can have like confidence in this infrastructure. For them to just like step up and say, I actually get it, I can just deploy something on Polygon and not worry about it, is like huge. And so when you like carry this forward, what you basically have is like this opportunity that we have at Polygon that is like, we can go into and reach out when the time is right into like the Web2 world and onboard people back in. And I think one area where you see us actually continuing this effort big time is actually in like the RWA world. Like if you look at like who's tokenized bonds on Polygon, you see like BlackRock with BUIDL coming to Polygon, in addition to like many other chains, but Polygon as well. But you just look across the board and you say, where have most financial institutions deployed any kind of financial instrument? And the answer is it's on Polygon POS. Why? Because there's trust there. Why? Because it was built up with many enterprises over a long period of time. And that's the thing that like we can leverage. But in doing that, we still need to go back to our roots of Web3. And that's like really what I am incredibly focused on, is like bringing us back to like those DeFi roots that we had. The thing that like ultimately most people want to use blockchains for today. And helping people understand that that's like what Polygon's doing. But yeah, that's like kind of how I see it. It's like less on-chain activity so far, though you do see it picking up, but like very well positioned to capture that when it comes back, but really focusing our attention on like, honestly, like degens today, because frankly, that's who actually wants to use blockchains day in and day out.
You guys are definitely the most trusted partner, we'll call it partner, with enterprise brands, enterprise clients, enterprise business, enterprise people. Fortune 500, Fortune 10, literally Fortune 100, Fortune 25, all that. The last thing that I remember, at least to my knowledge, there might have been more, but they probably weren't as large as this one. Was the Trump mint out that happened on Polygon, and I remember it was like all over my feed for like literally 2-3 days, applying the 72-hour rule. And you guys literally had now going to be two-time president of the United States of America mint out his literally NFTs that he tweeted about on your guys' brand, your guys' business, your guys' chain, which is absolutely insane. But aside from Trump, because he's got, I guess like him or hate him or indifferent, he's got the Donald Trump effect, whatever. Aside from that, a lot of the businesses, brands, Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s that came last cycle, and Reddit's probably one of the exceptions. A lot of them have dropped things that were, I guess, kind of faded. When I mean faded, I mean like they probably mint out, they probably sold, whatever, but community kind of left behind. They might own the assets. It might be in the hidden folder. The price not have gone up. There may be no activity on it. Whatever. How do we change that narrative as you see fit? Because you guys obviously have literally all the bandwidth to do that. When these teams, these businesses, these enterprise clients come back and they do more activations, they have more things up and coming. How do we change that narrative so that like the degens, like as you want to call them, don't fade like the enterprise brands? Like, and Trump was the exception, but like there will be more like him, as I can predict, within the next, let's say, year.
Yeah. So I think I got to plug the fact that Trump did drop 4 different collections on Polygon. So one
Yes.
wasn't enough, 2 wasn't enough. Come back for 4, which I
Yeah.
love to see. But yeah, this is like a really good question, and I think it goes back to something that I said earlier, which is like the comfort level of these enterprises in pushing Web3. Because like the reason why degens weren't really interested is because there was nothing. Like, look, let's take Starbucks. What did they do? They dropped an NFT, and then they basically say, now you hold our NFT. Let's create an entire Web2 experience based off of that. That's like not what a degen is here for. And we used to spend like a lot of time like educating teams on like what you can do beyond that initial experience. But as I was pointing out earlier, like once FTX happened, there was no more desire to go and experiment further. And what I think is going to happen this cycle, I still don't think we're going to get fully. I still really fundamentally believe we need a whole other cycle. So let's go like 3 to 5 years from now is when we're really going to see it. But I think this cycle is when we're going to start seeing like actual movement on chain from these enterprises, like where enterprises actually say, I'm going to issue an asset here and I am going to give you flexibility to use it freely. One like little step, this isn't that exciting, but like a little step of what I'm talking about is like Lufthansa. Lufthansa like issued these NFTs on Polygon, and then they created like a marketplace with a partner that actually allowed for trading of those NFTs. Now, the NFTs themselves probably aren't interesting enough to bring like degens into it. But the idea of an enterprise actually saying, hey, we're going to create a secondary market for these NFTs is the type of concept that I'm like looking for, right? And we just need corporations like enterprises to carry that out like one step further and say like, hey, I'm willing to go beyond, just NFTs. I'm willing to allow these to trade freely, and I can tie it into like a user experience and distribute it the way that like I know how to through Web2. And so I think we're going to see some of that more this cycle. I still just don't think we're going to get like the degens in there until like one more cycle, because we need them to get slightly more aggressive than what they've been in terms of like the institutions. And I think they're going to need a little more comfort than they have today. And maybe that's Trump that brings that, right? Maybe it's seeing real progress on the regulatory front that says, you know what, like we're willing to take that risk to some degree. But we'll have to see.
I think the regulatory front will take some time, but I think a lot of adoption will probably come through there. It's a good point. We'll touch that, very soon. I do want to ask as well, who are some of the enterprise teams, brands, businesses, personnel that are currently building on Polygon that you can obviously disclose?
Yeah. I think that probably some of the biggest ones on like the institutional side are probably worth talking about. So I think Stripe is one that I think is like a very I mean, it's massive. And I think like, to me, when I look at Polygon POS, one of the things it's done best is payments. And so that's like one big one. We're about to see, I don't know if it's in a week or 2 weeks, we've got another very big payments platform that is going to onboard to POS and issue a stable coin on POS along with enabling like remittances there. That's going to be, I think, like very, very exciting. I think Nike's done like a pretty darn good job on a continuous basis with their like swoosh stuff. It's not like it's not as exciting for like degens or stuff, but it's like they've continuously like iterated and done, I think, a better job than most other like enterprises have. And then you see it like on the financial side. I think like folks like Hamilton Lane, Brevin Howard are like issuing funds on Polygon. I think those are like probably like the big ones that come top of mind. And like I think the interesting about POS is like the diversity of what you have on there is like when you actually listen to that, you're like, okay, so we've got like a basically a shoe company. I mean, it's more than that now at this point with Nike. But you've got financial enterprises that are doing that in terms of like payments related companies, right? And you've got like funds actually doing stuff on POS, and that leaves aside like if you look at enterprises, you can include like gaming in that, right? And so you've got I think like a ton of like excitement around gaming, and the one thing that people don't understand about gaming is how Polygon still onboards like a lot of teams into gaming. But one of the things that we do also is we work closely with like others on this, right? So like we work very closely with Immutable. Like we view every win that Immutable gets as a win that Polygon gets. And the simple reason for that is because one of the things that we're working on Polygon is like this interoperability kind of solution with the ag layer. And ultimately, the more teams with more success that we onboard there, the more network effects that's going to create and the more desirability it's going to create to actually use the ag layer. And so I think like when we think about like big companies coming on, I think like we very heavily rely on like Immutable and others like in the gaming space to like bring those on chain for us into like the ag layer environment.
A lot of it is a network effect that compounds year over year. I'd be interested in seeing, the stats of people that we hear in bull cycle, then the amount of people here that are still remaining from a user standpoint or whatever we can qualify that we're still here in bear cycle, and then do that in relation to every single year and see if the percentage and I guess the multiplier between the two of them, the relation is growing every single year or it's kind of decaying. Like we have 10 people here and then 2 people stick around, and then we have, let's say we have 10 again, but now we have like 3, so the number's kind of I guess improving itself. I don't have that data, but it'd be interesting to kind of see if that holds out. And I would assume that's the case. If I'm wrong, well, I guess we're all in a little bit of trouble.
No, but I think we can actually objectively look at that. By the way, right? Like just look at like I mean, unfortunately, you have to look at price to prove that, but like just look at Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Like effectively, what you're doing is every year you're going up, and like every 4 years you're going like up and down. And it's slowly like increasing. And I think when you look at like users on chain, it's the exact same idea. It's like you see like a huge spike and then like a massive drop, but that massive drop is always higher than that initial baseline. And that just shows that we're actually onboarding new users like into Web3.
That's a good point.
So I think that's already happening.
It's a good point. It'd be interesting to do that with all the chains too. No, but it's a good point. I have to ask this. This happened yesterday, it happened yesterday, December 5th. David Sachs from All In Podcast, one of the bigger names in the world, in the United States at least, was chosen as the Cesar for crypto and AI. You can spell that CZAR. Cesar, probably saying it wrong, but he was chosen. I think it's a good pick. Sachs has been advocating for crypto for a while. I had read that he had gotten it on Solana early. I don't know if it was a pre-seed or if it was Series A, Series B, Series C, whatever it was, but he did have involvement with Solana, which is good. So he believes before this whole oopla of crypto the past 4 months, which is great. What do you think, Mark? Do you think having, Sachs in the White House as a, crypto Cesar, AI Cesar, both is a good thing for the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like massive. It's like hard not to see that as a big win. Obviously, he's like super focused on AI these days, and like a lot of people are. But like, he's a very big crypto advocate. I don't know that he invested directly in Sol, but he definitely was an LP in Multicoin, which indirectly obviously makes him like a holder of Sol. But he's been like invested across the space. Like, I think he's an investor in 0x. He's definitely an investor in DYDX. And so like, he's been somebody who like since 2017, 2018 has been investing consistently through his fund in crypto. And so having somebody who has that kind of belief in crypto, and frankly, who's had that kind of success in crypto too, because he has like, I don't know what his returns are. He has like a very good portfolio, clearly. I think that just leads him to wanting to be positive on crypto in general. And look, his stance is very clearly like, I want to loosen regulations in general and provide more freedom for companies to grow. And he's not stupid. Like, he's going to do that in a thoughtful way. He's going to help do that in a thoughtful way. And there's still like the regulatory agencies there that like, while there are going to be better leaders in place there, they're not just going to let us do like anything we want, however we want.
Of course.
But like in general, like the direction that we're exactly, and we should like we probably shouldn't. That'd be dangerous. But like the direction that he's going to push us in is just like in general is just massively positive from my perspective.
And Elon made this analogy on Rogan where I think it's perfect. He's like, imagine trying to play a football game, American football, for all the European listeners, is the real football. And, there's like 15 refs and there's only like 4 players on the field. There's nothing ever progresses. That's currently what the regulation standpoint of crypto is right now. I think it'll change. Mark, did you watch the Rogan and Marc Andreessen podcast that came out like last week or the week before?
No, but I read a ton about it just on Twitter in general, right? Saw the comments.
Yeah. Did you, which is good. I mean, like, obviously a lot of it, some of it just kind of like shooting the shit. But a lot of it, I think, was important. I think Elon posted the important clips too, as he always does, which is great. But I think for the entire world to have those clips going viral and existing on the internet, especially on a platform that's, I guess, loosened its restrictions too. Andreessen talks about debanking. Mark, you probably read about this. Yeah, the debanking concept and what's taken place in crypto the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years.
Oh yeah. We've definitely dealt with it a lot.
Can you, I don't want to get you in trouble. Can you elaborate on the debanking, like what it is, like for context for the listeners, and like how you dealt with it? Because obviously your career is pretty polished. So you're one of the guys that's probably, they're probably, I guess, going after, if anything, or not.
Yeah. So I could give like a personal story and then on the personal side, I've actually been like super lucky. I've taken like a very different approach than anyone else would ever recommend, which is like when I started banking at Citibank, I like literally went to a private banker and I told him I do a shitload in crypto and I'm going to continue to do a boatload in crypto. If you guys don't like that, just like tell me. And I talk about crypto with them all the time. I've had them ask me I think they asked me for every single buy and sell of crypto that I've ever done in my life at one point. Wow. In which time I told them I would need to spend like a year finding all of that. And then they asked me all my entry prices and exit prices. And I was like, honestly, I would love to give you all that. I cannot give you all of that.
Mark, but why are they asking you for that though? Why are they asking you for that? Are they allowed to ask for that?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely allowed to ask for it. But like the credit that I'll give them is like they still bank me. And I've had like no issues with it, and I've never given them all the information. And it's not because I haven't wanted to. Like honestly, I whether I should or shouldn't, I would. But like I just can't spend the time to actually find that information, and I would be like unable to actually send it to them. So
it's too much.
They were actually very responsive. So I've actually been like very lucky, and now I'm about to get very unlucky after saying that publicly. But like that's.
We can clip this. We can clip this. We can take this out. It doesn't matter. We can take it out. If we want to go off the record, we can. I'm just curious about this. We don't got to include this if we don't want to. It's cool.
Yeah. No, I honestly have no idea if I have to, but I've gotten very lucky. Now on the corporate side, it's very different. So like look, when I got to Polygon, it was like very hard for us to keep a single bank account, like anywhere. And we used to like literally have to open new accounts like on a monthly basis just to be able to like pay employees because they were shutting down accounts like all the time. We're now in like a very, very good spot. Again, I take a very proactive approach and our CFO is like very good. We like affirmatively let them know exactly what we do, how we think about it, what protections we have in place, how we approach it. And like, I think we probably have like 8 or 10 bank accounts now, like comfortably without any issues. That it's kind of ridiculous to need to have 8 or 10 bank accounts. Let's just say, we have a lot of like investment accounts as well. And like, we're actually totally fine. Like we haven't had issues for a while now, but I mean, we were like, we went through like a lot of issues for that. And I will say that like when I was on the legal side, whenever I would hear anyone tell me like, I'm baking with like JP Morgan, I would be like, can you please open a second account with Silvergate? Like, please. And, you know, when they didn't, I mean, I know I've seen a lot of the public stories of those companies having like their account shut down and they didn't have another account. And I was like, guys, why? Like you knew that was going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And like ultimately Silvergate went down as well. And that's just because like ultimately like the banks don't have anything preventing them from actually banking crypto clients, but the regulators decided to scare them enough that they didn't want to lose all their business. And they are forced to, you know, push out crypto companies because it's just not enough of their business. And that's like the core of the debanking concept that is like highly problematic. And I think honestly, just the fact that companies are going to be able to be banked in the US, in my opinion, over the next 4 years without any issues is like just a massive win. Like massive, because it's just a waste of time, like everyone's time, frankly. And we shouldn't need to deal with it. And so I'm excited about that.
Marc, last question, then I appreciate your time. I don't want to keep you too long. Pretty generic question, actually. What's the upside of building on Polygon?
Yeah, I love it. So first, you know, people define Polygon as like one thing. They're like, hey, Polygon is just like Polygon POS chain, and that's it. And like the reality is that we do more than that. And I'll walk through that like pretty quickly. But like ultimately, when you think of like Polygon, like why do people come build there? It's simple. Insanely low fees. By the way, still cheaper fees than you will find on literally any chain. It's stable. It's fast. You can trust it. Doesn't have downtime. And you can onboard users from any centralized exchange directly onto Polygon POS. So like, you just have this incredibly easy experience. And it's funny, once in a while, I hear people be like, oh, the experience on Polygon POS isn't that great. That like blows my mind because like, I think like part of my job is I need to go use every chain that I can use, like all the big L2s, all the big L1s, and then like our chains myself. So I like use them. I literally do not understand the concept of like Polygon POS isn't a great user experience. It's like, it is. Now, what application you use there and whether they create a good user experience or what wallet you use and whether they create a good user experience, that's a different story from does Polygon POS allow a great user experience? And I think the answer is yes. But there's another part of this, which is like the area that we're like very focused on right now is as like a contributor to what we refer to as the ag layer. One of the issues that we have right now, and people focus on it just for Ethereum, but it's an issue that exists across all of crypto, right? It's like everything is fragmented and it sucks. And like, you can say like Ethereum is fragmented, but the truth is like if I am on Solana and I want to go use something on Ethereum or on Polygon POS, like that is not easy to do. It's either expensive or slow, or I get a wrapped asset, which sucks. And that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so what we're building at Polygon, and I won't get into like the technical details of it because it's pretty complex, is something called the ag layer. And basically you could think of it as like, it's intended to actually solve like Web3 fragmentation, but like in a trustless manner. You don't need to trust bridges the way you do today. We use some like ZK technology that creates like a trustless way to actually go cross-chain. It's going to allow it to be cheap. It's going to allow it to be fast. And ultimately, like it actually means that like we can have, and it allows for like fungible assets to go across chains. So like you don't deal with the wrapped and unwrapped assets anymore and that entire concept. And so that's something that we're working on releasing like in the coming months in different stages. But like when we have like Polygon POS join that, what that basically means is that like by going to use Polygon POS, you can pull liquidity from any other chain that's connected to the ag layer You could pull users from any of those other chains. Like the whole intention here is to create the feeling of one chain while going back to the discussion that we talked about earlier, while allowing chains with like different, tendencies, whether it's like centralized or more expensive or whatever it is, to connect to it. And so that like allows people to like get the environment that they actually want to trade on, to play games on, whatever it is, but then still be able to like access liquidity, assets, users like that are on other chains in like a seamless way. And that's something that like we're very focused on making happen because like I just don't think that experience is good enough yet in crypto, like at all, like very far off. And I don't see any solution that is actually close to solving that in any meaningful way, which is why we want to solve it. And that'll end up making things like Polygon POS like even better and more desirable.
Even to your point, before we wrap this up, a lot of the ETH heads, Solana heads, refuse to go on different chains. They refuse to do it, whether it's the Maxiism or it's because of the layer of friction, whatever it is, they refuse to do it. But I think if you put them all in one place in one room, I think they would all kind of discuss. And I think the same thing applies when moving on chain as well. Marc, thank you again. We appreciate your time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Marc, what are your socials? Let's throw them out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. This was like a lot of fun. But I'm 0x Marc B on Twitter, and it's probably the easiest way to find me.
Awesome stuff. Marc, thank you again. Appreciate your time. And I'm happy we also call it Twitter, not X. It sounds a little bit better. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.